Situated in the northernmost part of Great Britain, Scotland covers a surface area equal to half that of England. The Scottish landscape is much more rugged than its southern neighbour, given its relief and its jagged coastline that boasts 800 islands along the Atlantic. These geographic particularities have strongly cemented the Celtic population, to the point that the Romans, who feared them, distanced themselves by building a dividing wall. The local language, Gaelic, remains in use to this day. Gaelic possesses the same roots as Welsh and Breton. Although only 2% of Scots still speak it, this language is much more than a simple curiosity. It can also be heard on television. Gaelic is witness to the vitality of a culture whose parliament was elected January 1st, 2000. This political autonomy is reinforced by a dynamic economy, thanks in large part to the petroleum deposits of the North Sea. Scotland mints its own coins, and in Europe, it is the leading financial country as a result of their management of powerful retirement funds. Scotland has long defended its identity. This battle cost its Catholic Queen, Mary Stuart, her life.
Vive la France! Vive la Scotia! Vive la Corse!
France has often come to the aid of Scotland in its battles. At the summit of an extinct volcano, Edinburgh Castle gives the Scottish capital city the decor of a theatrical acropolis. Initially, this medieval city adapted itself to the terrain out of a need to defend itself. The buildings have subsequently increased in height as further development of the city has been limited by the layout of the site. Dominating the large estuary of the Forth River, Edinburgh occupies a strategic position that has been disputed since the Middle Ages. The port of Leith offered a secure mooring as much for the Vikings as it did for the English. It has been adopted by the royal yacht Britannia. In the 19th century, the neighboring villages were engulfed by the rapid expansion of the city. As a result, urban planners elegantly designed the new face of a city whose classic look has earned it an eloquent nickname, Athens of the North. The castle has imposed its silhouette on the hill for more than 1,000 years. Despite wars and the ravages of time, this ancient royal residence symbolizes the pride and the power of the Scottish people. Running through the heart of the castle, the Royal Mile leads directly to the Palace of Holyrood House, erected on the site of an ancient abbey. The Royal Mile actually aligns 4 streets along a 1-mile stretch. St. Giles Cathedral has been both Catholic and Protestant, which may explain why the Gothic style of the Chardon Chapel contains certain unexpected decorative elements. This is the home where the Protestant John Knox, founder of the Presbyterian Church in the 16th century, spent the last 10 years of his life. Canongate, one of the sections of the Royal Mile, was previously an independent village populated by aristocrats who were attracted by the royal palace nearby. Today, certain shops represent the local attraction. In fact, this is where a famous local candy is prepared, fudge, a soft caramel prepared in a variety of flavors.
Our fudge is made with cream, with butter, with sugar, condensed milk, and it's brought to a temperature and then beaten to a certain consistency, and then it's put onto a tray and it's dried overnight, and then it's brought in here and we cut it up, and there's a display here of all our different fudges, and we have 22 flavours of our best, and this is the original Fudge House of Edinburgh.
Can I have a piece of ginger fudge?
Certain hotels dating back to the 16th century maintain activities that can be traced to ancient Scotland. For example, the world-famous Shetland wool respects ancient traditions. An important movement has been launched in the search of an authentic lifestyle and the discovery of a tumultuous past. Some are perfectly at ease in this trend.
Clan Chief Executive of the Clan Ranald Trust for Scotland. I mean, it may seem strange when you walk down the high street in 20th century Scotland and see a group of guys dressed as Highlanders, but it's the Scottish image we're trying to portray, a fitting image to our ancestors.
Movies have breathed new life into the heroic battles of an often oppressed Scotland. The Scots now recognize in the clothing of their ancestors a rallying sign as vibrant as the rolling of the drums. Edinburgh loses much of its austere character when August rolls around. According to the Guinness Book of Records, the International Festival is the largest artistic gathering in the world. The parallel festival, the Fringe, attracts hundreds of artists who take to the streets to promote their work.
Ladies and gentlemen, at 20 past 4 in venue 49. Beware of hunting snarks. Beware, for should you come upon a snark once it gets dark, well, it might just be a fool jam. When their time was nearly up and their day was nearly done, they saw their hands unfold before the setting of the sun.
Amateur groups often strike lucrative contracts, and art critics arrive in large numbers. For 3 epic weeks, 500,000 visitors joined the population of 500,000. When Edinburgh puts on a performance, the entire city goes up in flames. Making a loop around the south of Scotland and by crossing the valley of Tweed, one enters the Borders region that neighbours England. East of Edinburgh, the Forth River estuary opens up onto the North Sea. "30 meters above the sea, the red clay ruins of the Tantallon Castle are a reminder of the power of the Douglas clan. Nearby England did not tolerate their presence for very long, and this impregnable bastion fell in the 17th century after a siege of 10 days. At a distance, the Bass Rock, of volcanic origin, gives its name to the birds that inhabit it, les fous de bassin, or gannets. Along the Tweed River is Flore's Castle, which belonged to a partisan of the Scottish attachment to England during the 18th century. In exchange for his loyal services, the owner was named a duke, and he devoted a good part of his fortune to decorating the castle. Along with remarkable tapestries from Brussels, several Gobelin tapestries from the late 17th century can be seen in the ballroom. Other halls contain a remarkable collection of ceremonial garments taken directly from the family's closets. Among these, the knight's uniform from the Order of Chardon, the thistle, symbol of Scotland. Numerous abbeys in the region like Kelso, Dryburgh, Jedburgh, and Melrose were ransacked by the English. They couldn't tolerate the Catholic religious posts so near their borders. The thick walls of Traquair House, one of the oldest castles in Scotland, confirm that England constituted a great menace. Facing these enchanting hills crisscrossed by hedges and trees in the south, it is difficult to fathom the vicious battles that the English and the Scottish fought here over centuries. popular heroes have emerged from this time of torment, such as William Wallace, the Guardian of Scotland, executed at the turn of the 14th century. The Scottish heroes inspired a writer, the owner of the neo-Gothic castle of Abbotsford. However, it was Ivanhoe, an English knight, that provided him with his greatest glory. During the last 20 years of his life, Walter Scott lived in a home which he transformed into a museum. Surrounded by a collection of thousands of books, Walter Scott wrote 40 historical novels in the early 19th century. His encounter with the poet Robert Burns was decisive. The great poet was born in a humble home in the southwest. Of modest beginnings, Robert Burns expressed the national conscience of all of Scotland through poetry. Like this old bridge over Doon, the entire region inspired him. On the coast, the Culzean castle belonged to the Kennedy clan, no connection to the family of the assassinated president. However, another American president, General Eisenhower, was offered part of the castle after the war. Glasgow, a longtime rival of Edinburgh, Glasgow was named the Architecture and Design Capital of the United Kingdom in 1999. Remarkably, only 20 years earlier, this city was still polluted by the overwhelming industry that made it the second metropolis of the British Empire. The statues of Walter Scott and Robert Burns at George Square in the center of Glasgow cannot believe their eyes. Glasgow is reborn from the ashes of its past. A past that dates back to the Middle Ages, like the remaining tower of the City Hall prison, where the traditional Mercat cross is crowned by a unicorn. From the oldest pub to the oldest home, Glasgow has yet to unearth its monuments from underneath the soot that still darkens some of its walls, like these of a Gothic cathedral, the oldest building in the city. The building is unique. It joins two superimposed churches, the first at ground level and the second underground. Glasgow's wealth grew in the 18th century. In the merchant city, cargo originating in the American colonies arrived at its port. The merchants outdid the aristocrats thanks to tobacco and cotton. Here we see a church that has been transformed into a theater. One explanation for the intellectual vitality of Glasgow is its university. One of the oldest in Europe, it was founded in the middle of the 15th century. In Glasgow, the old and the new are juxtaposed in numerous architectural creations. The city owes much of its notoriety to the local architect Charles Mackintosh. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, he designed numerous buildings such as the Lighthouse, which is presently the site of the new design center. The linear quality of the fixtures is the work of an architect who created a surprising gift shop tea room and even designed the furniture. For supporters of Art Nouveau, architecture is a global art, and Mackintosh added a personal contribution of light and simplicity. The Glasgow School of Fine Arts represents an absolute masterpiece by an architect that was able to combine stone, wood, glass, and metal in one functional movement. Mackintosh was only 28 years old at the time. Misunderstood, he left Glasgow and moved to London, where he lived until his death, forgotten almost by everyone. At the time of working-class suburbs, Glasgow Green, the largest open green area in the city, was frequented by so-called undesirables. In the 19th century, those condemned to death were hanged there in order to set an example. At the same time, capitalism allowed architects to indulge in their fantasies. The old Templeton carpet factory is a copy of the Doge Palace in Venice. Every weekend, the Barras Market attracts a large crowd. Glasgow is the largest city in Scotland and has a population of 900,000. The majority of the population in Scotland is Protestant, and they do not miss out on any occasion to show their numbers, particularly so in Glasgow. In the 19th century, large numbers of Irish Catholics settled here to escape their miserable conditions. The relationship between these two communities has not always been easy. Nonetheless, the two groups dispose of an ideal battleground: football. The city has two rival clubs. The Celtics wear Catholic colours in a very explicit manner, since the Irish green clover dominates. The Protestants swear by the Glasgow Rangers, who wear British colours. Certain subjects unite all Scots. Haggis is one of these.
It has been served in the home for centuries. It comprises of beef, lamb, oatmeal, onions, seasoning, spices. It is basically the offal, the intestines of the sheep. And traditionally it is encased in the lining of the sheep's stomach.
Haggis is served with mashed potatoes and turnips. When leaving Glasgow, one crosses the countryside bordering the northern coastline. Inverness is reached by crossing the region of Grampian. On a volcanic eagle's nest, Stirling Castle cuts off access to the north. In the 14th century, during the War of Independence, the English suffered a devastating defeat at the hands of Robert Bruce, King of Scotland, during the Battle of Bannockburn. Robert Bruce followed the example of William Wallace, played by Mel Gibson in the film Braveheart. Several years earlier, this patriot liberated the Scottish people by diverting the English at Stirling Bridge. A memorial was erected in his honor 600 years after the fact. Several historic movies have been filmed in the small village of Culross, which has remained largely unchanged over the centuries. The style of the homes, of Flemish inspiration, and certain materials such as Dutch glass confirm the existence of long-standing commercial relations with northern continental Europe. A touring bridge straddles the estuary of the Forth River, lined by a metal structure generally reserved for railroad tracks. This cantilevered bridge, meaning a bridge suspended without cables, is 2.5 kilometers long. The villages on the east coast, such as Crail, all have the northern stamp scripted onto their homes with the characteristic scalloped gables. The workmen bend their backs to repair their fishing traps, but when they stand up to look into the distance, they seem to become characters in a novel, like Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. At the extreme end of the Fife Peninsula, the town of St Andrews stands in marked contrast with the other small localities in the region because it is one of the highlights of Scottish history and culture. This richness certainly explains the elegance and refinement of the city of 10,000 inhabitants. St Andrews University is the oldest in Scotland. It was founded at the turn of the 15th century and touts itself as a very liberal institution, having accepted the first female student in Great Britain in the middle of the last century. Rivalry between Catholics and Protestants shook the magnificent Roman cathedral and medieval castle where the bishops resided. Studying at St Andrews gives students wings to raise above all this fanaticism. Golf has made St Andrews the world's capital of this eminently democratic sport in Scotland, where the equipment is markedly less expensive than elsewhere. With 400 courses, Scotland is the mythic land of golf and tournaments attracting a large number of champions. Certainly techniques and equipment have changed, however, the long-standing traditions continue to be respected, like the memory of these shepherds who initially developed this sport in the 15th century using their walking sticks as clubs. The east coast spreads out along soothing coves, like those of the bay that harbors the small port of Stonehaven. The landscape can also be brutally rugged and weather-torn. The Dunatar Castle seems born out of this rocky madness that defies the sea and the elements. Carved out of massive granite, the city of Aberdeen is a conglomeration of tones of grey. In order to add a certain touch of colour, it must rely on the goodwill of the sky. Thanks to the stone, which has been worked here since the Middle Ages, an overall remarkable harmony is revealed. The granite is intricately fashioned for the Neo-Gothic university, symbolizing the spirit. Perhaps more massive for the provost's quarters because it represents authority. Despite the scarcity of fish in the Northern Sea, Aberdeen remains the most important port in Scotland. 70% of all fish caught in the high seas by the British goes directly through Scotland.
66, 8, 68.
Old Aberdeen. In an obvious attempt to soften the roughness of the stone, Aberdeen has become the Scottish city with the most flowers in bloom. A city completely dedicated to the Scottish ground which it has defended at the cost of many lives. Scottish soldiers set out to fight to the sound of music, which has now lost its warlike accents. In the Highlands, musical troops face off in colourful matches, the Highland Games.
I am from the Ellen Royal British District Legion Pipe Band. The tartan that I wear is the Nicholson tartan. The tartan I have here is called a plaid.
The martial allure, the sense of hierarchy, the power of the group, The statutory equipment and the blade hidden in the sock are all vestiges of a forceful army whose energy has been channeled through sporting challenges. These games date back almost 10 centuries. Their purpose was to select those who would serve as bodyguards to the chieftains. In Scotland, power rhymes with relaxation. In these elegance competitions, some wear the kilt better than others. In the Supreme Challenge, 3 men are required to transport the caber, a fir tree trunk, which is 6 meters high and weighs approximately 60 kilos. From a sprint start, competitors must throw the trunk while remaining centered between 2 lines and dip it. Failed. Not a dangerous sport, except for the judges. It is believed that originally this movement was the specialty of lumberjacks who threw the tree trunks into the middle of the river. The tug-of-war is the only challenge in the games where teams face each other directly. If muscular power is balanced, the coordination of movements sets up the advantage.
Yes! And yes! Come on! And yes! Come on, hit it here! Hit it here! Hit it! 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 Come on! Up! Quicker! Kill it! Kill it! And yes!
And while the team pulls, the leader pushes. Certain touches of finesse in the land of the Muscle King. Young girls and the rare boy, who's recognized by his beret, oppose each other in aerial dances to the sound of a solitary bagpipe. Turning away from the sea to follow the flow of the Dee River, the scenery becomes more rugged. Castles blend with nature, like Balmoral Castle, the Windsor's summer palace. The Renaissance castle of Craiths softens the angles. It was constructed in the 16th century by the Burnett clan and is a surprising gingerbread color. In the interior, fishermen are joined by grouse hunters. With its large deer population, hunting has become an important source of revenue for Scotland. Curiously, tourism has filled both churches and hotels, which are often one and the same. In the solitary highlands, the sheep roam, introduced by large landowners in the 18th century who wanted to make their enormous estates more lucrative. As you move into the mountains, ski resorts begin to crop up. However, you often need to search hard in order to find snow. Amidst the barren landscape, the immaculate Blair Castle is visible from a distance. It is home to the Duke of Atholl. Its historical significance, sumptuous furnishings, and refined decor serve to explain why this castle is among the most frequently visited in all of Scotland. A bison. Yes, we are still in Scotland. Among the hills, the Highland Wildlife Parks brings together specimens of the local wildlife, past and present. Prey, such as the grouse, and predators, like the Arctic fox. Herbivores, like the reindeer, and carnivores, such as the solitary lynx, and the wolf, that is rarely far from his pack. And a special mention for the superb Highland ox. Everywhere in Scotland, animals are the objects of attention. Roaming sheep are gathered up by remarkable dogs capable of obeying their owners' whistles and shouts.
Normally at the trials you have 3 sheep are put out at the far end, approximately maybe 300 metres away. The dog is sent from the post with a handler. The handler stands at the post and sends his dog either right or left-handed, collects the sheep at the far end, brings them up to the fetch gates, turns them round his back to what they call the drive away.
The dog's gaze can become so fixed, some believe they actually hypnotize the sheep in order to control them better. Well trained, these dogs are worth a fortune.
Lie down! Lie down, please!
But it's true that it doesn't work every time. Although fortified castles represented effective obstacles to an army's advance, often the terrain alone was a hindrance for the enemy. In this manner, given its narrow passage, the Killiecrankie Pass was a highly strategic post. Once, during a battle between the English and the Scots, an Englishman became legendary after jumping over the torrential flow. Queen Victoria enjoyed the view of Loch Ness. Scattered along the Spey River are numerous highlights of Scottish heritage. The whisky distilleries have made this country famous around the world. Making whiskey requires water-soaked barley, which sprouts on the ground. The barley is dried on a peat fire to stop it from germinating, which gives it a unique flavor. The barley is then crushed and steamed. During this process, the starch is transformed into sugar. After cooling, yeast is added and the sugar turns into alcohol. The percentage of alcohol is that of a strong beer. These copper stills are for distilling the filtered mixture. The size and shape of the stills is crucial. The colorless alcohol is poured at 90 degrees. In order to balance the flavor, the alcohol is aged in oak barrels for several years. A good whiskey is aged at least 8 years. The best remain longer. The whiskey gets its beautiful amber color by being in contact with the oak tannins. Every bottle contains centuries of experience, which make up the true whiskey. Near a geological curiosity baptized by the French, and deep in a secret moor that has maintained its mystery and desolation, the movement of troops that confronted each other and resulted in the death of 1,200 Scots over a period of 40 minutes has been reconstructed. This was the Battle of Culloden in the mid-18th century. The memory of the clans involved in the battle is engraved in stone. Nearby, some of the most remarkable tombs in all of Great Britain are found in the stone heaps at Clava Cairns, which date back to the heart of an era 2,000 years BC. The small village of Gardenstown, situated at the foot of a cliff, dates back to the beginning of the 18th century. Situated at the foot of a cliff, Pennon cautiously watches the sea. The houses stay safe by only exposing their flanks to the sea. Portsoy is an old 17th century port that was recently restored. A Roman church and the arches of an old railway viaduct enhance the horizon of Cullen, which faces the Moray estuary. Overlooking the sea, the romantic castle of Dunrobin is most definitely haunted. This idiosyncrasy greatly enhances the real estate value of a majority of Scottish castles. The Elgin Cathedral ruins evoke the splendor of a 13th century building previously called the Northern Lantern. The majestic cathedral was known throughout Scotland. Near Forres, the Sweno monument is adorned with pictorial engravings whose significance remains unclear. The Picts were a Celtic tribe of medieval Scotland. The Moray estuary leads the way to Inverness. The town is in a strategic position, and King Macbeth built a fortress here several centuries before inspiring Shakespeare. At dusk, the estuary serves as a theater for an unusual performance. The dolphins frolic in front of Fort George, an ancient English bastion. Beginning at Inverness, a guided tour crosses diagonally over the Highlands to meet the Atlantic coast while passing by Skye Island. Appearances can be deceiving here, and the fog, which hides certain realities, adds even further mystery. On the edge of Loch Ness, Urquhart Castle stands guard since the 14th century. The building was part of a vast defense system, which practically cut Scotland into two influence zones. The castle offers an ideal observation post to watch for the appearance of some strange silhouettes on the water's surface. Optical illusion, hoax, or nature's whim, the Loch Ness monster has become the primary tourist attraction of Scotland. Thanks to excellent marketing, Nessie's myth feeds commerce, and the exhibition centre couldn't be more official.
For the first time, a long neck was reported.
The legend began in the early 1930s with several photographic plates that revealed the presence of a gigantic creature. The photos were fake, but both laymen and scientific alike seized the phenomenon.
Postcard. The submersible Machan rested silently on the loch bed.
Several expeditions have investigated the murky and glacial waters of the loch using such diverse techniques as radar, sonar, and video cameras. The monster has not yet yielded its secrets, but continues to stimulate the imagination.
Identification. Mammals swim with vertical undulations, fish and reptiles with horizontal ones.
The Caledonian Channel is an extension of a deep geologic fault that links Loch Ness to the Atlantic Ocean. It took 20 years to complete and extends over 100 kilometers, punctuated by numerous floodgates. The granite cliffs are an attraction for mountain climbers. Hikers might take 4 to 5 hours to reach Ben Nevis. It's the highest peak in the United Kingdom at 1,344 meters above sea level. The less courageous can reach the peak by taking the gondola. The rounded peaks at the summit are evidence of the devastating and long-standing effects of erosion. All the raw elements of this primal geological world are evident within Glencoe Valley, where Quest for Fire was filmed. In the Trossachs region, nature achieves a straightforwardness and life is sweet. You're not dreaming. The Jacob sheep is a 4-horned sheep that doesn't always know which way to turn. Walter Scott dedicated a novel to Robert MacGregor, alias Rob Roy, Scotland's Robin Hood. This well-meaning bandit was born on the shores of Loch Katrine, where only non-polluting steamboats can navigate. The loch supplies Glasgow with its drinking water. The narrow and expansive stretches of water known as lochs are the result of geologic faults in the Scottish soil. Loch Lomond is the largest in Scotland. It stretches for almost 40 kilometers and is deeper than the North Sea. The village of Inverary is part of the ancestral domain of the powerful Campbell clan. It faces the sea at the end of Loch Fyne and hasn't changed since the 18th century. In Scotland, true whiskey lovers search for the famous single malt. That is, brands of whiskey unique to a single distillery, as is the case for wine. At least 100 qualify. The others are composites, and no one knows how many.
We don't know. Every time we count them, we get drunk. But our list has got over 550 whiskies, and then there's probably another 200 or 300 that we also carry. The oldest one we carry is probably this one here, which was distilled locally at Springbank and was distilled in 1919. It's a 51-year-old whiskey. It was bottled in 1970. And that is one of the oldest whiskies available for retail sale in Scotland. The price? I'm willing to discuss £7,500.
The high price of Scottish whiskey is justified by its quality, but is also due to the heavy taxes. You can never get enough of whiskey-derived products: marmalade, mustard, honey, fudge, and cake. The ideas are limitless. The prison of Inverary dates back to the 19th century. Since it is no longer occupied, the municipality has recreated the living conditions of the detainees, starting with the tribunal.
I'm a good Catholic. Marriage is holy.
The automatons and mannequins are so lifelike that you would swear they are real.
I find you guilty of bigamy. You will have 6 months in prison to reflect upon your sin.
The prison operated in isolation, and everyone had a specific role.
I'm the wife of the prison governor, and I look after the women prisoners, so I supervise the cooking, the cleaning, and the washing, which the prisoners have to do. And I make sure they do the work well. The warder looks after the men, and that's the staff of the prison at this time.
Traveling north, the western coast appears jagged in the distance. Sheltered in the hollow of a small bay, the present site of the city of Oban was well known to the Vikings. Thanks to the railroad, this region has become a popular swimming resort. A local banker built a monument overlooking the city in order to provide jobs for the unemployed. The road to the Isles winds through a lavish landscape as it follows the railroad tracks. The Glenfinnan Viaduct is captivating as you gaze upon the northernmost edge of Loch Shiel. A monument was erected in memory of Bonnie Prince Charlie, who set off from here in order to bring the Stuarts to power. Isle of Skye is a part of the Outer Hebrides Islands. The chain of islands forms a wall between the coast and the ocean. The eroded soil can barely sustain even minimal vegetation. The forms and light combine to create a moon-like landscape. Decomposed heath and lichen form peat on the surface of the soil, a very lean fuel which produces much less heat than charcoal. The house, therefore, is built to close in on itself. Here we encounter the authentic Scotland, where Gaelic is still spoken. Under pressure from the Roman Empire, the Celtic language found refuge in northwestern Scotland, Ireland, and Britain. Certain words borrowed from this ancient language are common to French. The word gigot, for example. In the northern part of the island, the Kilt Rock cliffs shelter a herd of grey seals. Scotland is home to half of the world's population of grey seals. Since 1995, a bridge links the Isle of Skye to the Scottish mainland and leads to the intersection of 3 lochs. Here, on a rocky islet, we see the legendary silhouette of Eileen Donan's castle. On the shores of Loch Marie, it seems difficult to imagine that this country contains 5 million inhabitants. Although the latitude is the same as Moscow, tropical colors punctuate the western coast. Sheltered from the cold ocean breezes, the palm trees take advantage of the warm Gulf Stream. In this mild oasis, the extraordinary garden of Inverurie accommodates a variety of imported vegetables. In order to safeguard its culture, Scotland has risen up as a united front many times throughout its history. It has sustained in its reckless isolation the scars of brutal battles, with high stakes not limited to the harsh moors. The Scots preserve a pride that is part of their rugged nature, and a tenacious will to defend a timeless land against all odds.